So we're here to talk about our AAA VR games. What was it like making a AAA VR game, Ryan?
I'm the studio head of Camouflaj and the director of Batman Arkham Shadow, and I survived the development of Batman Arkham Shadow, and that's why I'm here. Is this a support group or is this a panel?
I think we can use this as like group therapy.
Yeah,
This is public therapy.
Yep.
It probably helps other people to know we're all commiserating. I'm Shawn Kittelsen. I'm the Senior Vice President of Creative at Skydance Games, the Skydance Interactive team, team that brought you Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, and as of December, Skydance's BEHEMOTH. So I also survived developing a AAA VR game, and we shared a lot of common challenges.
Yeah, we did, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the uncommon challenge was the number of platforms that we launched on versus Arkham.
Yeah, so as I'd love to hear your tale about that, because for us, we were lucky in the sense that Batman Arkham Shadow was exclusive to Quest 3 and Quest 3S. We were lucky enough for the game to be bundled with new purchases of those two units, but we really only had one core platform to worry about, right?
Yeah.
But for BEHEMOTH, you had PC, Quest 3, Quest 2, and PlayStation VR 2, if I remember correctly.
Yes, and on PC we were both on Steam and on the Rift app with cross-buy for the Quest and the Rift. So every build had multiple submissions, multiple layers. QA was multiplicatively more complex, and I think the biggest difference though is the impact on the team of needing to scale graphics and performance.
Right.
To go from Quest 2 up to PSVR 2, which I think PSVR 2 was like our highest performance spec, because you could basically take the PC version, turn on all of the graphics effects, and then using dynamic foveated rendering, get the same performance out of a PlayStation 5, like not even a Pro, just a regular PlayStation 5, that you would get out of a really sick, $2,000 gaming PC. So that range and catering to that range, it put a big strain on our art team. It put an even bigger strain on our engineering team, because you sort of get performance set on one platform and then find out that it wasn't working on another platform.
Yeah.
We had to duplicate all our visual effects, and the game had to be played at least 4 times per build, like per test, because you would need to go through every platform, at least once on PC, once on Quest 2, once on Quest 3, once on PSVR 2. So if you can imagine how that compounds over time, the number of passes that your art director needs to take through the game, reviewing for visual fidelity, the number of passes that the design team needs to take through the game, ensuring that hand tracking and registration is accurate. And we really wanted the same experience across all platforms. Yeah. And then we also threw at ourselves the challenge, which I think you guys also took up as well, of we weren't using any sort of like frame gen or interpolation or
That's correct.
Yeah, that makes a big difference in the experience, but it makes it a lot harder.
It does, yeah.
You
guys went hardcore, and our team, for Batman, we experimented for quite a while with, at least on the Quest platform, it's the Space Warp application. Yep. Space Warp. Yeah. To basically kind of double your frames, right?
Yeah.
But the team, because of how fast and frenetic Batman was, and also for BEHEMOTH too, I mean, you really sort of feel it as a player if you got it enabled. And so the team just worked really hard to make sure it was natively running at 72 frames. And I think I'm really happy we did that.
Yeah.
But yeah, for other kind of AAA games that we saw on the platform last year, I think it was actually a pretty good amount that they were using that, and I could feel it. But maybe it's just me, or maybe it's just you, because we live it every single day.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's from Saints and Sinners to BEHEMOTH, there's like the best compliment that we've ever gotten. It's like, there's a Skydance feel to the games. And I always want to say, like, that's just native frame rate, baby. It's nothing special. I mean, there's some extra love in there.
Well, for one thing, what your team does really well is the feel of the weapons and the weight, and how you kind of trick the feel of you. It feels like you actually have that heavy weapon in your hand.
Yeah,
right.
We call it visual haptics.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah.
And that's again, it's largely like an animation technique. Where what we found is that where your hand is in real space versus where it is in virtual space does not actually need to be one-to-one. So if you move your hand like this in real space, but in virtual space, your virtual hand is lagging behind your real hand, your brain interprets that as weight. Like, your brain interprets that as drag. It's the wildest phenomenon.
And to build on top of that, the game that we worked on prior to Batman Arkham Shadow was Marvel's Iron Man VR, and we really struggled for the longest time trying to figure out how the repulsors would work, because we needed the player to shoot out of the palms like Iron Man shoots out of the palms in the comics and in the films. And what was interesting, one thing we found was that the people's perception of where their hands and where their palms were versus where they actually were in reality were different.
Yeah. And
they would be giving us feedback like, no, my hands are extended out perfectly, and then we would look at them and say, no, they're actually not. But so we had to cheat it actually quite a bit. I thought that was so interesting, and it seems somewhat related to what you're talking about.
100%.
The weight.
It's like there's a degree of tolerance that the player has that you have to find through a lot of testing and self-examination of just like where like you said, where your hand is and where it really is, like where you see it, where you perceive your hand to be, and that's how we create weight in VR. Really, it's like if you see your hand dragging, it feels like you're carrying something heavy. If you see the hilt of the sword like bending this way as you're lifting it, you perceive weight that isn't there, and that requires that native frame rate, requires that one-to-one. Because if you disrupt that with, and I think asynchronous space warp and all of the things that we can do with like DLSS and all that stuff, like it's amazing technology, but for XR, it's real touchy. It's real touchy because you can perfectly tune that experience for the player, and then if they're getting varied results because of processing power and what have you along the way, it breaks the illusion like right away.
Yeah, and I think it feels like it's a reoccurring theme for not just the games that we worked on, but just the time that you're talking about, like the testing and the iteration, is the time that's required for, in fairly large team sizes to provide that quality experience that we promised users through the games that we're making. And it's not to take away anything from like what indie devs are doing and like all the experimental stuff that's happening. But I think for the level of quality and the expectations we have for like kind of like console-like experiences that we want to bring to these devices, that's that extra level of love and care and time that it takes. That I don't know if it's that we all really we have to be reminded of. I feel like at every single dev cycle, because it's like, oh yeah, we have to do this again now for this mechanic, because it's still the playbook for developing in VR is so thin compared to what you would have on mobile is probably this thick, and then like PC console, given how many decades now that's been going, right? We're still like we're adding chapters to this book every single year, it feels like, right?
I always say it is like VR is still in, like, we're barely out of the silent era. Mm-hmm. Like if you were comparing this to cinema, it's so primitive relative to where it will be in 30 years or 50 years. We're baby stepping right now. We're making mistakes and learning from every single game. And the audience is transforming over time, so preferences and hardware capabilities and everything else, it's constantly shifting landscape beneath you. So what you learn on one game might not be as broadly applicable the next time around. And I think we certainly found that with Behemoth as well. You mentioned like the expectations. I feel like we both led with CG trailers before gameplay.
That's true.
Which creates expectations. I think for you, you did it the right way, which is don't do it like 2 years before release. And then promise a launch date that maybe is
I really love
that
Game Awards debut trailer.
It's a dope trailer.
It's dope. It's
but it's a commitment. It's like, oh, great. What did we sign ourselves up for? And then you create that expectation. We also found out that like we had such an interesting range of reactions to Behemoth, where there were players who came out of Saints and Sinners expecting Behemoth to be the same survival horror gameplay. And it was like, oh, did you not see the advertisements with giant barbarian swords and huge monsters? Like, that was never going to be the same. But where one game is Behemoth is very much action adventure, and Saints and Sinners is survival horror, it turns out that the VR audience there were a lot of people were looking for that survival horror. They're like, I wish there was crafting. I wish the game was harder. I wish there was this. On the other hand, you have people saying, the game's too hard. Even as an easier game, it's too hard. So I think, did you feel the same, any kind of like jolt between people being like, why can't Batman fly like Iron Man? Or
no, I mean, we're lucky. And fun fact, Shawn has worked on Arkham way before I've worked on Arkham, right? You've got a history with the franchise.
Yeah, from Asylum through Night.
Yeah, so it's
worked on Origins, which had a whole lot of.
Yeah, we're like story-wise the next chapter after Origins and Origins Blackgate, and what does another like fun similarity we realized we had when we were hanging out in Gamescom last year. To answer your question, like our players' expectations, I think we're able to meet them to this extent that we, just as much as we possibly could, we tried to just copy the great work that Rocksteady did on the Arkham titles and WB Montreal, and try to translate those into VR the best that we could to match those expectations that users had. Like they expect to be able to have the free flow combat from like the flat screen games. We delivered that, how the grapple works, how stealth works, how the predator moments worked, and so that way I feel like we were able to like accelerate development or kind of cheat in a way versus what you had to do, which is it's new IP, new expectations, new gameplay loops.
New genre.
Yeah, new genre that you're pulling. And so, that you definitely, and then all the platforms we just talked about, like, I feel like in a lot of ways.
We stacked the deck against ourselves on purpose. Because why not? Why not do the hardest thing? But yeah, I mean, like, there's some pride, I think, in the team of wanting to do that too. Like, every game that we make, we want to do something we haven't done before. I got a tattoo to commemorate launching the game because I was so like proud of the team, and I had promised them like, hey guys, when we finish this game, I'm gonna get a freaking tattoo. And then I did it, which now they know I'm legit.
If they didn't know already.
Yeah, no, they're like, well, wow, that's a real tattoo. Like, we'll wait for it to rub off. And I was like, it's never. You can scrub it all you want. But for you guys, like, the expectations of taking on such a legendary franchise and knowing like that it's been so many years since Arkham Knight, there's such a hunger for the game. Like, you had to, and we've talked about it before, there was like a breakthrough moment where combat clicked for you. Because I think that's, of all the things, free flow combat is the aspect of that people most, that's synonymous with the Arkham brand.
Yeah, and that was the concern going in when we pitched the game to Warner Brothers over 4 years ago, and it was the concern I had. In fact, apologies for people who've heard this story before, but when I first got the call from their Facebook at the time, they said, hey, we'd be interested in doing an Arkham game, a new entry in the Arkham franchise, but built from the ground up for Quest. I initially said, well, I said to them, I'll think about it, but in my heart I said no, because we can't translate the moment-to-moment free flow combat from Arkham. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And then I talked to our design director, who was way more optimistic. I'm usually an optimistic guy, but he walked me through how he would approach it. He convinced me. We went back, we pitched, and we promised as part of that whole process that the first thing that we were going to do was we're going to deliver 2 prototypes. One was based on locomotion, so you're moving around, you feel like Batman, you got your grapple gun, you got your glide, which we felt we could easily pull off because of our work on Iron Man, where we disproved a lot of the established, quote unquote, established rules for VR in terms of locomotion for Iron Man. So we knew we could do that for Batman. And then the next prototype was for combat, and utilizing time dilation that we stole from Superhot VR, some rhythm aspects that we stole from Beat Saber, and it came together in a really great way. And we just blew past like the biggest concern on the project pretty early on.
Which is huge, dude.
Yeah, it was a nice victory.
I mean, look, I'm blowing smoke at him in public for you, but he knows how to do it in private too. Like, working on 4 Arkham games, I have over 1,000 hours of Arkham gameplay in my memory banks, and going into your game was stepping into that world. It was stepping into that gameplay. Every single mode of play was there and represented, and the Cape Glide was as satisfying as the first time I did it in Arkham Asylum.
Well, thank you. And a big moment for me, and this is a true story, is that when we met for the first time at Gamescom, we were demoing each other's games, and I was really nervous about showing the game to somebody who had worked on Arkham before, right? I was hoping Shawn would like it. And I was also really nervous to play Behemoth because I'm a pretty competitive guy. And I come out of that demo, I'm like, yeah, it's really good. And had to report back to the team, like we've got some heavy competition, but it's good competition because we wanted Holiday to be awesome, right? We want as many awesome games to be there as possible. But seeing you come out of that, Gamescom was such an important moment for the team because the game was coming in quite hot, and things, as you know, I want to know about for Gamescom for you, but once the team knows they have to deliver on a playable, you have to cut a bunch of stuff, you have to focus, and that was really the moment where I feel like the whole game clicked, and that was really satisfying. And then I looked at the calendar, I realized we only have 2 months left to ship the whole thing, and that's where the existential crisis came in. But I was kind of curious, like you going into Gamescom as well, was that the same kind of deal? As like, hey, let's just focus on this area, let's make it awesome. And now you have 3 months, but also like 17 platforms. You also have to get the game out.
Yeah, I mean, we had actually polished up our vertical sliced and used it as a press demo earlier in the year, last year. And then for whatever reason, I let someone convince me, she's in the audience, call her out. I let someone convince me that we should have another demo, a different demo. We shouldn't come with the same thing. We should show people more of the game, get them hyped. It's a new IP.
That's
they
right.
gotta see what it's all about. So we had basically like took the development team, diverted all resources to this one encounter. Now, I think ultimately it did benefit from that polish. But it was kind of like we finished that, and then we got back, and we had to now, okay, we've got the rest of the game to finish and polish. And it was, no problem admitting in public, it was a difficult process getting that game across the line. Like, that game Behemoth took on so many challenges, and we really did stack the deck against ourselves. It wasn't just platforms, it wasn't just doing something new. It was saying, we're gonna have giant physics-based bosses, and you're gonna be a live physics object on them, and you're gonna have a grapple, and it's not gonna be tethered to anything, it's gonna be free-flowing, so you can swing yourself out of the world at any time. The amount of times that we broke the game ourselves or launched ourselves out into the ether and said like, wow, we just left the level completely. We had such a hard job ahead of us, and I think the team did an incredible job. But if I would give anyone a recommendation, it's like, check your ambitions early, because the more that you can focus in and narrow the field of view, and we cut a lot of features on the road to release. We had a lot of things that we had wanted to do that ultimately we told the team, hey, this is making it unrealistic to finish the game. We have to narrow our focus.
Well, I think one thing that our games have in common, and I remember feeling it when I demoed Behemoth at Gamescom, was that you and your team, you smashed through these preconceived notions about what you can and cannot do in VR, immersive, just like the Camouflaj team did with Batman Arkham Shadow.
Yeah.
Like if this was 5 years ago and you told people, you described the game that you're going to make, a lot of, maybe even yourself 5 years ago would say, I don't know if you can climb these big behemoths and do all these different actions that your team did, and also what we did with Batman. And I think that was something that we were talking about over lunch when we think about one of the themes going into, what kind of recommendations or guidance we would have for two survivors of, big AAA development for VR is that it's an ever-changing landscape.
Yeah.
And you have to keep an open mind, and basically almost anything is possible, right, with the right mindset and the right team and the right approach. And just kind of the willingness to know that unlike PC console, even unlike mobile, like immersive VR, MR, AR, all this stuff is still so fluid, and the rule book has not been defined, right?
Yeah, don't hem yourself in with imaginary rules. Like, I remember there was a point where talking with our team, grapple wasn't fun. There was a point where the grapple in Behemoth was just a rope launcher. Like you would kind of like fire off a rope, and then you'd have to clamber up it hand over hand. Now, players don't always like climbing too much. They like getting quick ways. Your guys' grapple is a great example of like, here, zip, get yourself there. But then when we said like, no, well, why aren't we actually allowing ourselves to swing like Spider-Man? Well, that's going to make people sick. They'll hate it. And it's like,
try it.
Why don't we try it? Why don't we make ourselves sick? And let's see if we can unsick ourselves. And ultimately, I think the grapple is one of the best features in the game. It was awesome to have both our games have grapple and completely different approaches to it, though, where I think what your game did was really embody the spirit of you are Batman, so you are like efficient and effective, and no move or motion is wasted, right? Everything is like, if I'm Batman and I see that point, I'm going straight to it. And then our game was, you are a feral barbarian with a curse, and you've got uncontrollable rage. So you might go a little wild and swing off into a space that you weren't expecting to. And that kind of chaos was, again, there are two different approaches to it that I think both yield fun for their fantasies, their aspirational fantasies.
This is why I love this space that we get to play in, because it's just that illustrates it. It's just that there's not one way to do grapple. There's not one way to do combat. There's not one. It's just such a wide open space that just needs, I think, just more great content and people to continue to play the content that we built, and also to play. One thing also, I know we're getting close on time, but one thing that I think it was a secret sauce for us. Much to the detriment of the team, I think, was the requirements that I would put on them to play other content, especially VR content, because you want to skip a bunch of like time and pain. Just go play other people's stuff, and whether it's good, you steal it. I mean, borrow it or give credit, or if you don't like it, then you know not to do that. Yeah. And it's like one of the easiest and cheapest ways to do quick R&D. I don't know if you felt the same about your project. But.
I mean, one of the things when I joined Skydance was like, so how many games are people playing? And I would take my one-on-ones. What games are you playing? And all I heard was like,
I'm playing Last of Us and Civ 6.
I'm still playing Fortnite with my kid, and it's like, no, what's the latest VR game you played? Beat Saber. We all play Beat Saber, but what else? So I mean, I'm really fortunate. One of the points of merit that my boss gave me was like, you got the team playing more games. We're spending a lot more money on R&D, but they're playing more games.
But it's so much cheaper.
It's so much cheaper than making mistakes that other people have already figured out solutions for.
Right.
Like if you're, I mean, again, like I think your game is a masterclass in that there are many different ways to approach combat that are not all as literalized as what we've thought of as VR fisticuffs, and punch to move is like just figuring that out. That's such a key thing for Batman. It's like Batman doesn't walk through a fight; he punches through. A fight.
You got the quote out there. But it's all stemming from the Rocksteady thing, and it's just to that point about we didn't constrain ourselves, right? We tried things rather than just talked ourselves out of it, as you mentioned. And I really feel like that same spirit was just running throughout.
When you broke a cardinal rule, which is don't move the player without them moving. That a lot of people think is like a tenet of VR development. Like, don't move the player unless they move themselves. And it's like, Well, it's player motivated enough if they punched in that direction.
That's right. Yeah, if
they'll go with it.
their brain is okay with it as long
Yeah.
as they have that intent. And it was the same thing with Iron Man too. Turns out if your physics are really good and it's aligned with what the user believes is meant to happen,
Yeah.
their brain is going along for the ride and they're okay.
Yeah. If it's internally consistent,
Right.
it won't be so dissonant for players. Yeah. Well, I know we're at time, so we probably can't take questions, but just a.
You actually do have time.
We do have time.
Yes, yes.
Well,
So,
before we take questions, Ryan, what's the future of AAA VR for you? Because we did say we were going to talk about that, so I feel like we have to say something.
I think it's just continued just pushing the envelope and a commitment to great content,
Yeah.
right? And just continue to work hard and play in this space that we're so lucky to be playing in. How about you?
And I think, just to echo something that you said earlier, like, watch where the player community is going, and you really have to try to anticipate that. Like, again, like, be mindful of the audience. Take a look at play other games, but also take a look at what's selling on the stores. Take a look at what players are really engaging with and how they're engaging with it, because the market is changing. Right? The market's going to change. Players are going to age into playing VR. Players are going to come in fresh to VR. So we can't just cater, especially if you're making a AAA game or something more hardcore. I don't actually think it's enough to cater to a niche. I think accessibility is really, really important. And everything that we've done post-launch of Behemoth has been, how can we make this game more accessible? How can we make it more playable for a broader spectrum of players? Because ultimately, we are not going to get people in headsets by being an exclusive community. We have to get people in headsets by being in like an inviting community. By saying, you're welcome here, this game is for you, all our games are for you. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Swing for the fences and play to the crowd.
Awesome.
yes, yeah, swing. And speaking of the crowd, we're going to open up the floor for a couple questions. And just raise your hand if you would like to ask one. Yes, to the first person in the front.
Religiously played both games, so
Well, thank
thanks
you.
so much for both titles. Punch to Move was absolutely mind-blowing. Do you guys think that when it comes to as big a productions as you guys have done, which is a huge privilege, there are very few developers that get to work with those budgets and those teams, do you think that with new games like Gorilla Tag and others having challenged preconceived notions about movement and maybe play to a different demographic, are we going to see games like Behemoth that are doing new things, maybe not even leaning into an existing IP, really breaking more rules? And if so, which ones?
I think, kind of like we've said, I think breaking the rules is fundamental at this point. So I think we have to. I don't think that there's no play it safe strategy for VR right now, unless you're making a Gorilla Tag clone. That seems to work for some people. But again, something else is going to come along and capture the imagination of players. So I do think the biggest thing is making sure that you support a range of physical accessibility. That's, I think, number one. We took for granted for too long that everybody can flail their two hands around liberally and not get tired. And kids can do that to an extent, but I think for more mature audiences and even for younger audiences, we're going to see a different class of user come in who doesn't want to move around and be standing all the time. I think we're going to see a sedentary class of VR user that is like, listen, I didn't get into this to go onto the holodeck and get fit. Now, I lost a lot of weight playing Beat Saber several years ago. It was really good for my body. But not everyone wants to engage that intensely. Some people are just like, let me stay on the couch. So I think if anything, we're going to see a greater breadth of content in that area. But again, just because someone's on the couch doesn't mean they can't punch across the room.
or swing dual swords like they're doing in Deadpool with VR, which was just announced. And I could see like even more refinement as like, all these big games are coming out and learning from one another as well. But I couldn't agree more with Shawn, what he's saying in terms of all these different interesting input paradigms as well that we need to keep an eye out for too, because those are very interesting. And I think I can't wait to see what happens more in that space.
Yeah.
I don't know, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Fantastic talk. Thank you very much. Really great. There's a famous book in film called Grammar of the Film Language. It's all about editing and how you splash things together. And some of that's counterintuitive. Like you wouldn't think that and they discovered this kind of editing in the early 20s. Mm-hmm. Do you guys have an equivalent for this whole VR crazy world?
Wow. What do you think?
I think one thing that I'm reminded of actually is this talk that James Cameron did with Andrew Bosworth, the CTO of Meta, where they talk about this, like the language of film and how relatable it is actually to, even though they're 2D images where they're cutting and there's different fields of view and everything, that it fits in well with the brain in terms of how we remember memories and things like that. But there's also what James Cameron, probably to no surprise, talks about as well, is that with stereoscopic, a lot of those moments are even more memorable for people. And I was lucky enough to kind of realize that as I've been exploring more VR content over time, and in some of the moments that we have in Batman Arkham Shadow, for example, I just fundamentally believe that with the right framing and with the right emotional moment and the human connections you can have with these characters with stereoscopic, like the moment we have like with this character named Joe in our game, that it hits harder than if you were to watch that. Unfortunately, like a lot of people might just watch that on YouTube on a 2D flat screen, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I'm a big believer in leaning into the strengths of this medium, and not necessarily copying everything that maybe would work for like a 2D film.
I think it's completely different, right?
Yeah.
You guys are writing those rules.
Yeah, well, we're writing the rules, but I also think that there's, since we haven't found where all the boundaries are yet, I do think that an opportunity for personal intimacy with character interactions, that we've only begun to scratch the surface of that, right? That it's going to take time, more effective tools for scaling content and all of that, and not even necessarily AI, but just making it easier for developers to go from idea to execution, that you can actually deliver the kinds of complex character interactions that you want. Because when someone's looking you in the eyes, it does hit different than if you're watching it on a screen. I think if there's any other thing, it's that I think so far we've actually all been sleeping on third-person content in VR. I do think that there's a lot of room for more third-person action games in VR. Not just games where you're watching as if it's on a screen and it's just stereoscopic in 3D, but where you are following along with the character as a follow cam, or games that mirror your motion onto a character that you can see. There's a lot that we can see just in terms of how players connect, and like I was saying about visual haptics, like it doesn't necessarily need to be one-to-one. It's amazing what you can get, and we've created demos of this stuff internally and worked on like what happens when you mirror action from your hands and your head onto a character that's standing in front of you. And there's some really, really interesting things that we can do there that I think we haven't even begun to explore. And the teams that push those kinds of boundaries, they're on the edge of a breakthrough. Yeah.